competition on their podcast mission. Never know what you get. It's K on a precision. If you don't know, you better find out. The Dad Pack are here to prove a point. We three kings just believe that you don't want to tussle with them. This show is thunder. Subscribe and tune in, and you're laughing to the very end. Don't turn your back on the Dad Pack. Don't turn your back on the Dad Pack.
Put the kids to bed, Dad's home. We are the DWO podcast, representing the Dad World Order. I am the handsome head of household, Mr. Magnificent Mike Martin. And with me, as always, the rest of this patriarch pack. We got the big bad, bearded daddy. He is Big Rig Eric Murphy.
Honk if you hear me, baby. What up?
Oh, yeah. And he is the perpetual mid-carder and the two-time world record holder. He is the wrestling t-shirt guy, Cephas.
Cowabunga, boys. Today's shirt is a The Rock shirt. It's an old school WWF shirt. This is an old one from the personal collection of your boy Nudge, and it's day 893.
Hell yeah, dude.
Almost
Love that.
900, which means I'll do 900 on the show. That's cool.
That is pretty neat. I like that. Well, as Mr. Magnificent said, we are the DWO podcast, and tonight we have with us a very special guest. He is the author of the WMAC Masters book, all about the show, which we're going to get into and talk about. Mr. Kris Landis, sir, how the heck are you?
I'm doing great. I've done it's probably 10 or 12 different podcasts now, and that was hands down far and away the best intro anyone has ever done on any of the shows I've been on. That was worth the price of admission alone. That was amazing, you guys. I don't feel worthy to be on the show at this point because I don't know besides word nerd.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Does that make me Dennis Rodman in this situation? I don't know where we're going with this.
A little bit. The intro song is actually new. Our boy down there, Cephas, just recorded that the other day. We had a kind of our own rendition of the original NWO music, but we decided we needed our own Wolfpack theme.
So I need some lore background here. Was there another set of dads that you guys turned on in a civil war to become the Dad Pack and go black and red? Is there somebody plotting revenge going to sneak up behind me out of that door and clock me one? What's going on here?
There was an original trio, and there was a certain particular member of that trio who decided that his dad duties kept him a little too busy to commit to the show. So he left, and he was gone for I don't know, maybe 20 episodes, and they were just by themselves. And then we had met in between all this time, and one thing led to another. Originally, it was you come in on the Thursday episodes, and we'll call it Wolfpack. And then we just started booking all kinds of shit together. We're like, okay, well, I guess it's every day. And then the Wolfpack became the new DWO. But we're still the black and white too, and we're still cool with the OG members. Shout out Brandon. You know what I mean? But
so now you just need DWO Japan. You just need to branch out to Japan, and Great Muda will show up. It'll be great.
Oh, that'll
if
be
Great Muda has ever anything to do with our show, there we go.
You won.
Yeah,
that's the game.
I'm a happy camper for sure. Yeah. Funny enough, we were talking about how you met Ethan Page and Danhausen before.
Yeah.
That's actually how me and Cephas met, was at a Danhausen signing, and Ethan Page was there as well.
Was there too, yeah.
So that dude, both of those guys hold a very special place in at least I know my heart. Probably these guys too, because without them, who knows if this is a thing. So,
and my wrestling T-shirt shit, Danhausen has been insanely supportive of, which is great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's done videos with me multiple times and shared my stuff, and I probably have 15 of his shirts. So it's ridiculous at this point.
That's rad, man. That's really cool.
So tell us about this book, man. Give us a little intro, background on what the book's even about.
Yeah, so we'll start at the very beginning. WMAC Masters was a martial arts television show aimed at kids that was on in 1995 and 96. Most places around the country, it aired either right before or right after WWF Superstars, depending on your local market, usually on the Fox or WB affiliate in your local market. It featured real-life world champion martial artists, most of them from the sport karate circuit, a couple of Olympic gold medalists, and then a couple stunt actors from the original cast of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. But all of them were legit world champion badass martial artists. They were all playing kind of pro wrestling style, over-the-top versions of themselves. So world kickboxing champion Hakeem Alston became Hakeem the Machine Alston. You might know him as the guy who gets his soul snatched from Shang Tsung in the original Mortal Kombat movie. And they were doing choreographed fight scenes, and they all took place at Universal Studios on the rides at night when they were closed. So you've got people fighting in the King Kong streets and things like that. And the show was way ahead of its time. I was the target demographic. I was 6-7 years old, at the time, loving it. And after 2 seasons, there's Hakeem right there. Perfect.
Nice.
Boy, this show's got everything. This has got magic. I love it.
After it, man. So yeah, it was almost like Mortal Kombat Street Fighter, but it was a TV show.
Yeah, but it was a TV show, and it ended after 2 seasons, and it ended on this giant cliffhanger. Not to spoil too much for people who want to watch it the first time, but one of the good guys turns bad guy, steals something very important, and the last shot of the show is this reveal that one of the biggest baby faces has actually been a heel all along. Flipped me out as a kid. Never sat right with me my entire life because they never got to resolve it.
Never got the
flash
payoff.
forward. It's 2020. Pandemic's just starting. My son's born literally in March of 2020. I'm a stay-at-home dad. I'm a writer. I put out a murder mystery novel. I cover professional soccer. So, I've got a little bit of a web presence, just enough to look legitimate, even though I'm just a dude. And I'm sitting there, and my murder mystery novel's gone sideways because the publisher was a scam artist. Never saw a dime, lost a lot of money. I'm not up to doing another novel at the time. And so I'm doing what you do when you're kind of down. You go back to the things you loved as a kid. And for some reason, I turned on WMAC Masters on YouTube. All the episodes are on YouTube. Thank God. I don't know who put them there, but the whole series is on YouTube. And I binged the whole thing. It's 2 seasons, 13 episodes each, 25-minute episodes. So real easy to binge. And at the end, that damn cliffhanger's there. And I'm like, I wonder if anybody's ever found out what was supposed to happen. I do some Googling. No one's ever found out anything that was supposed to happen. And I go, I've got nothing better to do. I'm just sitting here with this 3-month-old, not writing anything. I'm going to see if I can find out anything about the show. And a lot of these guys and gals who are on the show still have martial arts schools to this day because that's what they do. That's what they did. And so I started sending out some emails, just cold, like, hey, I'm a writer from Columbus, Ohio, independent. I'm looking to do something on WMAC Masters. I don't know what yet. At the time, I had no idea there'd be enough for a book. I thought maybe an article on Medium or something. Maybe if I'm really lucky, a series and I gain a little bit of buzz, use that to do something bigger, maybe in pro wrestling. That was kind of my thought process at the time. And every single person I talk to is like, I will tell you everything, and here's the phone number for somebody else on the show. And eventually, after a couple months, I realized I'm talking to the people who created the show. I've talked to pretty much the entire cast, and I've got interviews lined up with a bunch of them. This is a book. And so all of a sudden, I'm doing an oral history of the show where now I've got to talk to everyone. And so for about 1.5 years, I conducted interviews. I wrote, had another kid in that time. And 2 kids during lockdown was a great decision. And we ended up, my wife is a graphic designer. She laid out the book, did all the design, made it look super professional. So it's not the royal we. There's actually another person involved. But we ended up interviewing everyone but 4 members of the cast. All the creators, the producers, the writers, so much of the crew, camera people, lighting, and we documented the whole show from an unaired pilot episode, what it was going to be originally, to where it was going to go if it didn't get canceled, and we actually found out. So it was kind of mission accomplished. So that's kind of the story of the book and of the show. There's a lot of things that it kind of is adjacent to and touches. It was originally going to be a WWF production. Yes, WMAC Masters was originally going to be the World Martial Arts Federation. Bruce Pritchard actually talked about this in one of his early shows with Conrad Thompson. He didn't remember anything about WMAC Masters, just that they were going to do a karate show. And I was like, that's probably Bruce Pritchard being full of shit, right? That's your first thought when you hear that. Right. When I was talking to the creators, one of them's a gentleman by the name of Al Kahn. Al Kahn, giant in the merchandising licensing industry. He worked with Vince for years, and he goes, "Oh yeah, we worked with Vince. I'm the one who told him to change everyone's name, so he owns the names." I'm like, "Oh, okay, so you ruined a lot of really good wrestlers," but I digress. But it turns out that the show was offered to Titan Entertainment, Titan Sports, and they agreed, and they went into pre-production. And right as they were getting ready to start shooting, Titan pulls out, and no one from WWE would talk to me. Of course, why would they? But the timing of it, this was 1994, would it be when they pulled out? Kind of right on the heels of the WBF fiasco. So they probably had the Bodybuilding Federation go south, and they were like, we're not doing anything but wrestling, back it off. And so from there, it was no longer a WWF. But we were very close to Hakeem the Machine Austin being on WWF Superstars, which would have been absurd.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What an alternate timeline could have happened out of that.
Yeah. Later on, once production was happening, a guy named Howard Brody, who was a part of NWA Florida, he co-wrote Dusty Rhodes' biography. He actually passed a little after I spoke with him, which was really sad because I was like one of his last interviews. But they were going to work together and do a pro wrestling show kind of beside it. And that didn't end up happening because Bandai, the toy company who was financing WMAC Masters, they got into a tiff with the producers and kind of pulled their funding. So the sideshow died. But that concept that Howard Brody was going to do stayed alive. They ended up doing some stuff with New Japan Pro Wrestling, and it became Ring Warriors, which ran out of Chicago until I think 2018, 2019. Killer Cross got some of his first national exposure there on WGN Superstation. So a lot of little pieces that kind of touch here and there for pro wrestling, and then Power Rangers, Mortal Kombat, all sorts of stuff.
I've always thought they should do something similar in that vein, just like a Power Ranger style show, but with pro wrestlers in which the kids can come see it live. You know what I mean? Like take that step of disbelief, and run with it. You know what I mean? Give these kids as characters can get with magic powers, and give us a only for kids wrestling. I mean, I would definitely still watch it, but an only for kids wrestling, I think, would be really great, especially in this day and age.
That was kind of Chikara for a while, like the crazy wacky lucha super party, which I always enjoyed. But that would be really cool.
I think I've said that before, though. I mean, I think it's a mistake for WWE to try to, in this day and age, to be an all PG company or put on an all PG show, because I feel like there's that limits your demographic, but the climate's there for, like he said, you could have a kids only or a kids centric, there are definitely characters that placate to that. And, and there's definitely a lot of room for, more adult themed, entertainment show. And I don't mean like adult entertainment, but you know what I mean?
I'd watch that too, but that's a whole
that's another podcast.
Yeah. The kids are in bed, but the kids need to be at grandma's for that one.
It wouldn't be an RKO, it'd be an RKO.
That's an idea for an intro if we ever do like a Dad's After Dark. Send the kids to grandma's.
Yeah, send the kids to grandma's. They can't hear this shit at all.
We got a week of Cinemax, and we're gonna use it.
I just gave me an idea. I'm gonna reach out to C and B grade porn stars and see if we can get some interviews.
Oh yeah, it's time.
Hell yeah, dude.
Just don't invite Val Venus. Nobody wants that right now.
No one wants to talk to him.
What?
You think that? Go Google him for a little bit. He's off the deepest deep ends. You think because he owns pot stores and stuff and his own pot brand that it'd be like, oh, Val is cool.
No,
not so much.
Yeah, there's plenty of other people to talk to.
But
I'm sure
yeah,
my wife
you
would be
would
really excited if I was talking to porn stars.
Yeah.
she'd be pumped.
Yeah. Shh, good show, babe.
It's surprising to me that the show ever got canceled. I mean, with how, because I remember I was a Power Rangers kid, man.
Yeah.
Like I watched the shit out of Power Rangers, and I loved every martial arts. You know, I loved Street Fighter, I loved Mortal Kombat, and it's surprising that something bigger didn't pick it up and run with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so canceled, I say canceled for ease of explanation. It didn't technically get canceled in the traditional sense. Basically, for season 1 in pre-production, Bandai, the toy giants, Power Rangers, they financed the show. That's why you saw Bandai put out the lines of action figures, all that kind of stuff. After season 1, for reasons that are speculated on and people have given me conspiracy theories about that I'd be happy to go into. But after season 1, Bandai dramatically slashed the budget for the show to the point where they were pretty much on a shoestring budget for season 2. And they still made it. And season 2 was amazing. At the end of season 2, they were like, yeah, we're not giving you any money. Here's what you have, figure it out. And they were like, we can't do a show to the standard we want with that budget. And they did shop it around, but because it had already been on 2 seasons and because this is pre kind of the cable, yes, those are the figures.
Damn.
Do you own those?
I do. In fact, during the pandemic and writing the book, I decided it would be a genius idea to try to get all of the series on card. And I did that, and I paid way too much to do it, but damn it, I have it.
I was going to say, I bet that's niche as shit.
It is.
People wanting all kinds of money for those.
I'm looking at prices right now because I just grabbed that photo off of eBay, and they're. I get it.
Some people think because they're old, they're worth a lot more than they are. There are some prices on there that I'm like, nobody should pay that. I can find one for a better price. But
I see one figure for a character named Tsunami that's listed for $350.
That's really on the high end. Tsunami was one of the ones that didn't ship as broadly because by the time his figure came out, they had already cut down on distribution. So Tsunami, Superstar, they didn't get as many figures in stores, so they are harder to find. I actually had to find a Tsunami figure on card. I actually bought it directly from the actor who played Tsunami, and he autographed it. So
Cool. That's awesome.
But 300's a bit excessive. They also did a dragon belt accessory, the belt that the guys wear when you win. You get their little symbol and you put it on your belt. When you get 10 key symbols, you can challenge for the dragon star. And if you win, you sit on the throne. But there's some belts floating around for a couple $100 too, and that's just ridiculous. I don't agree with it.
Do you own the belt?
I do. I own 2. I have one on card, and then I needed one for a cosplay for my kids. So when the book came out, we were invited to one of the martial arts tournaments. Some of the cast, since they're coaches, they were going to be there. They're like, come out, we'll do a little kickoff. So there were 4 of the cast members there to do a little kickoff. And for fun, I dressed my son and daughter up as characters from the show and had my son carry around the little dragon belt. It was
That's awesome.
One of the highlights of my life was hanging out with my childhood heroes with my kids. It was
yeah, absolutely.
That's why.
That's how I feel when I go to wrestling shows, man.
Right.
It's the best.
Yeah. But where I was going with that, Bandai and the action figures, basically they season 3 didn't happen because they couldn't find someone to pick up the show. Because they had already invested too much money. They looked into doing other things with the show, possibly a movie, possibly taking it as a national touring thing, possibly as a residency in Vegas and doing a live show 8 times a week. But unfortunately, none of it came good, and the cast were starting to get offers elsewhere. A couple of them went on to do the Mortal Kombat live show right after that. Bridget Riley and Sophia Crawford were in the Power Rangers movie. Sophia Crawford became the stunt double for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So they all kind of went their separate ways, and unfortunately it just didn't happen. But the show was really ahead of its time. The people choreographing the fights were doing stuff on kids' TV that you wouldn't start seeing until Jet Li started blowing up, until The Matrix kind of started bringing that Hong Kong cinema influence to American cinema, and they were doing this on kids' TV in 1996. Isaac Florentine, who is a famous martial arts action film director, was one of the choreographers. Yuji Noguchi went on to be the guy who pretty much did every Power Rangers season after like 1998. He was the fight choreographer for that, and he was one of the choreographers in season 2. So they were doing. There's a lot of cheesiness because it's a kids show from 1995, right? Mm-hmm. But below the surface level cheesiness, there was a lot of really cool stuff that was ahead of its time that I think resonates with people kind of in our age and interest bracket because it touches so many different things that were kind of hallmarks for us.
Well, in the little bit I watched, I noticed that because I love to watch retro stuff as well, and obviously I'm a collector of a million different things, but I went back and watched Power Rangers a couple of years ago, so when I heard about this and you coming on the show, I definitely gave it a watch, and it's watchable. That's the thing that's the most important. Like, I still love He-Man, but if you go back and watch the original He-Man episodes, they suck and they're not watchable. It's like that unwatchable that I can't enjoy it. This was actually intriguing, and at this point, I want to binge through it all myself.
Highly recommended. There's
I mean,
so much good stuff.
I didn't catch it in its original run. I was like 17 at the time, and I wasn't. I'm the old dad of the group. That being said, after meeting you and preparing to have you on the show, I did some reading on it. But just even like reading the storylines and the kind of synopsis from show to show, man, it sounds like professional wrestling.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like factions and heel turns. And I mean, it's very. If I had been 10 years younger, or maybe not even that, but a few years younger, it definitely would have been way in my wheelhouse.
Yeah, and that's kind of the fun thing. Pardon me. That's kind of the fun thing is that getting to go back and experience it now, you can put it in the context of all these things we love. Like you can go, oh, I can totally see how they were building to that heel turn, or oh, they did a really good job of building to that title fight, or whatever, because those were things that as a kid you wouldn't necessarily pick up on.
You just hated the bad guy and you loved the good guy. That's all it was when you were a kid.
I will caution you, at least 50% of what's written on the internet about this show is bogus. I ran into that a lot trying to research the book. There's a character in season 2, she's called Black Widow, and she's a fairly minor character, but with an important part. But she's listed online as Tiana Noguchi, and she's supposedly the real-life sister of Yuji Noguchi, who was the choreographer and also a character on the show. And so I'm like interviewing Mr. Noguchi, and I say, hey, I would love to talk to your sister about her time as Black Widow. And he goes, what are you talking about? I'm like, Tiana, your sister who played Black Widow. He's like, I don't know who that is. I don't have a sister. She's like, okay, cool. So this is just bullshit. And so I still don't know who this woman is. There's no record of anyone named Tiana Noguchi. I spoke to the casting people, the directors, the other people on the show. People remember her. They remember that she exists. Nice girl. No one can tell me a single thing about her, let alone what her name was. So to this day, I'm still searching for Black Widow.
Oh, man. Somebody put Wang on this. If you don't know Wang.
I've spoken to Wang. He mentioned it on a live stream he did. He said he was going to do a video on it, but he's a big channel. I'm a little guy. That never ended up happening. But he did mention it on a live stream, and every once in a while, he tosses me a retweet, which always helps me. So he's like, that's really wild. I'm like, you're Wang. That's so cool. Why are we talking? But yeah,
I'd love to talk
to this day, still no idea who it was.
So you wrote this all came to fruition during COVID. Do you think, COVID was such a unique time and, a lot of people's lives, and I mean, everybody's kind of being stuck at home and all that. Do you think that helped you, your journey to do all this? People were these people who were usually maybe out and about doing their thing were more secluded, and they're like, yeah, I got shit to do. I'll help this kid out.
Yeah, definitely. Especially in the early days when I was just kind of getting it rolling. Chris Casamassa, who played Scorpion in the original Mortal Kombat movie, he's probably got the most star power outside of WMAC Masters. He was the first person to say yes to me, the first person to give me an interview. And I have zero doubts that it's because his karate schools were all shut down at the time. This is the guy who trained Jason David Frank, the Green Ranger, in martial arts. So, he's got a lot. He's got like 12 different schools he's running, but they're all shut down. So, he does business consulting, but how many people are coming for that in the start of the pandemic? So, I think the availability of people and the time to kind of sit around and ruminate on things they did in the past when they were younger. A lot of them were like, dude, those were like my golden years. Those were my early 20s, my mid 20s. I was living the life. I was told some stories that I had to keep out of the book off the record, about life in Orlando. And one of them involves Shaq in a golf cart, So I think the pandemic had people in a kind of nostalgic frame of mind, in addition to being more available. Yeah.
Sure.
So I want to sidetrack just for a second. We're talking about this pandemic thing, and this is the Dad World Order. I got to ask, first off, was your child born before the lockdown or after the lockdown? And then I also want to know how your mindset was bringing a child into this world during what we had no idea what was going on. If you could touch on that a little bit.
So my son was born on March 20th, 2020.
Oh, wow.
I am told that I was one of, if not the last husbands allowed in the room for weeks, if not months, at Ohio State University Medical Center. So it was terrifying. None of us knew what was going on. They were like, we don't know if you can be in here. I'm like, do you have a rule saying I can't be in here? They were like, well, no, but we don't know if we have a mask for you. I'm like, I'm going to be in here. They're like, okay, let's do it. First kid in general is terrifying,
Mm-hmm.
And my wife's family's from Florida, so they're not here. My family's in Central Ohio, but we're like, we can't let our baby near other people, they can see him through the doorway, but they didn't get to hold him for like 6 months after he was born because we were so afraid of everything,
Oh, yeah.
And
we had no idea what was going on back then, man.
Yeah, and I quit my day job to be a stay-at-home dad before the pandemic really was a pandemic. They were starting to talk about what to do if something went wrong, but nothing had gone wrong yet. And I'm like, glad I don't have to deal with that. But my wife, graphic designer, she was at a company, pretty big company. She came back from maternity leave, worked for 3 days, got furloughed, and then she got let go. Wow. And so basically my son's first year and a half of life, it was the three of us with nothing really going on, unemployment, paying out and, monthly stipends and stuff. And it was terrible and terrifying, but it was also kind of great. And by then, our daughter was born in October of 21. My wife had started at a new job by then. She's a art director for Highlights for Children magazine now.
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Goofus and Gallant is both of me.
He's going to be so tickled that you said that.
Shit, we want to talk to her too.
Right?
She's not the podcast type. I'm the outgoing one. She's the quiet, smart, hot one. So
you got a sugar mama. You dog.
I'm out kicking my coverage so hard, man. It's crazy.
Hey, as long as you're aware of that, that's the important part,
Yep.
Dude,
That's
I'm
fair.
like,
I love you, dear.
I mean, in addition to the fact that she's the main breadwinner, in addition to the fact that she pays the mortgage and all that stuff, she still took the time to design my book that I'm putting out as a passion project that at the time we were pretty sure we were going to lose a shit ton of money on. This is all, I'm pointing at the screen like you can see me pointing. What the fuck am I doing? You're on TV, Chris. These are all the different symbols of the different characters. There are a lot of characters. Not all of them made it onto the cover of the book. Everyone I spoke to, I tried to get their symbol on the book. If their symbol's not on the front, it's because I didn't get to speak to them. The exception being the guy with the yin-yang symbol. That was Richard Brandon. He passed away before I started on the book. He passed away a decade ago now, unfortunately. So I got permission from his wife to use his symbol on the book, and we have a nice little tribute to him in there. But yeah, she designed the book while working a job, while we had 2 crazy kids. And because we got invited to this martial arts tournament, our window for when we wanted to get the book out went from here to here. And we had like a crazy crunch of like 3 weeks to edit it, proof it, and then get it to the publishers, or they weren't going to be able to get me copies to sell by the event. So it was absolutely wild, and I will take every chance I get to put her over.
Is she the first person to read all your work?
No, she is so gotta get things done, go, that sitting and calmly and reading things feels like she should be doing other things. So very rarely can I convince her to actually sit and read something. Like if it's really important, she'll do it. But if it's just, hey, I wrote this thing, tell me what you think, she's like, send it to your editor. You know, I have an editor.
I don't get time for that.
You got a guy for that?
I have an editor in Texas, Jenny Leidecker, who edited the book, and she keeps me on track. So usually the wife reads it eventually, but she's not usually the first.
Hey, that's what everyone always says. My wife is super supportive with me, which she is, but it's to a point. You know what I mean? It's to a point. They will help you, and then that's enough.
Hey, it's pretty tit for tat. She's got her own collection too.
Yeah,
Well, I will say this. My wife is incredibly supportive of me, but she also knows when to pull me back if my idea is too big or too crazy, or I'm missing some key element. And there was a book in the pro wrestling world that I was wanting to get going on, and I was starting to make some connections on. And it was about a wrestling promotion that had a lot of controversy and then ended. In controversy, kind of in a very damaging sort of way, abusive way to people. And she was like, I don't think you should do a book on that. There's no way to do that without glamorizing people who did shitty things. She doesn't swear, but essentially shitty things. And I was like, okay, we're not going to do that then, because if she feels strongly enough to tell me that's not a good idea, then I know that it's probably a bad idea. So we've kind of morphed that idea into something I can't officially talk about yet, but I'm working on. I think I told you guys a little bit about the idea off air, but I've gotten some interest in it, and if I get a little more interest from people in certain positions, it's going to potentially be really cool.
So, I think your wife's moral and professional compass.
Yes, absolutely.
That's what I was about to say. I think that's an important dynamic to have, is to have that almost at all times. Sometimes the roles reverse, but at all times one person needs to be the eager beaver while the other one needs to be the old, hey, chill out for a second.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like that's a good dynamic to have. And sometimes me and my wife balance that out on each other. You know what I mean? Sometimes I go to conventions and buy 42 shirts. Sometimes she leaves in the middle of the night to go save a cat. So, we both do our extremes.
Dude, I still remember you said in that text.
I left.
No, what the actual?
I left with a bunch of merch to try to get rid of a bunch of stuff in this room, right, to go sell at this convention we did a table at. And I ended up, I don't know if you're familiar with Colt Cabana, but I ended up working a deal out with Colt Cabana, and I traded him like 30 different micro brawler action figures, and we ended up doing it for 40 shirts, and then I bought a couple shirts too. And I texted my wife, I was like, well, I got rid of all the brawlers. She's like, oh, cool. And I was like, but I bought 42 shirts. And she's like, but what the fuck?
The brawlers were smaller.
They took up less room.
I can't help myself. And they were from Colt Cabana. He could have talked me into 40 more, probably.
I've watched people just hand you shirts all the time too. Which, if I was like an indie wrestler, for sure, I would definitely hand you one of my shirts.
I also like to buy them too.
I did hand you one of my shirts, technically.
For example, our buddy Crash Jackson, he's tried to give me shirts a couple of times. Same with Jake Chris. And I'm like, no, I'm going to pay you. Like, I'm going to pay you because I want to support you. But at the same time, sometimes you just got to be like, all right, thanks, bud.
That's pretty key.
That's pretty. Thank you.
Yeah, so let's talk about where we met at Revolver, because you guys are like the official podcast of Revolver, correct?
Not quite the official podcast of Revolver.
You should be.
In my head, we are.
You should be.
Let's
Because let's be honest, your intro is better than 30% of things on Triller TV already, so you've got the production values.
Listen, it's all Eric's face. Sammy doesn't like Eric's face, so that's part of the problem.
Whenever I see Sammy, I become Big Ray, and I have to wear a mask.
Sammy doesn't like his face. No, but in all seriousness, we do sponsor that company. We are in cahoots with them, but they also have the Bitter Buds podcast that they work on. They also have, but as far as like as close as you could get to being the official fan podcast of we are there. We've had a whole bunch of people. We're going to have a whole bunch more people on. Sammy's been on our show. We do Revolver rewinds and Revolver previews at this point. It's our gimmick, man. You know what I mean? I don't know how much you've watched of it. Was that your first show there? Or?
That was my first live show. I had caught bits and pieces of different shows over the years. But the last Dayton show was my first live show. And I've been to a bunch of indie shows. Ring of Honor way back in the early 2000s. Chikara. AEW's not indie, but I've been to shows of all ilk. That show in Dayton this past time was the best top to bottom indie show I've ever been to. And that's not a knock on the GCWs of the world or anything, because I've never had a bad time at a GCW show either. But that show, when you go 1-2 with Mike Bailey and then Alex Shelley versus Trent Seven, those are your first two matches out the chute. How can you deal with that?
And guess what? There's 6 more matches on the card.
Right.
And what's crazy is we're with you on this because we've been to a lot of Revolver shows, but we all left out there having the discussion. Was that the best Revolver show? Now, some of us say yes, some of us don't. But the point is we're having that discussion. But the next card, bro, 622, we're driving to Iowa for this one, bud. We're going all the way out to Iowa for this one. And
if my kids were a little older and I wouldn't be leaving my wife with an angry autistic 4-year-old and a 2.5-year-old who thinks the world revolves around her, I'd be trying to get in the car with you.
I get it.
I'll be watching from the couch, but I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable. But what stands out to me from the Dayton show, I don't know names of some of these guys, and I apologize to these guys in advance, but I'm telling the story in a positive way. The fraternity boys.
Alpha
Sig.
Yeah. So those guys come out, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? He's cutting this promo, and at the time I'm like, you're doing the your asshole gimmick that MJF was just doing, 3 months ago. Like, come on, man, what are we doing here? And then Macklin comes out, and they fight through the crowd, and obviously, I'm from Columbus. I'm not local, and this is my first live show. But I'm getting the feeling, these are the local boys, and the crowd's getting behind it, And then all of a sudden, like, oh shit, this is kind of good. And then they're in the ring, and then they're going, and the pledge is chasing Killer Kelly, because why wouldn't you be chasing Killer Kelly? But I digress. And then he gets the flash pin, and the place comes unglued, and I'm like, holy shit. This is pure pro wrestling. And I went from being like, who are these dudes ripping off a bigger company to that was the best thing I've seen. And I just saw Alex Shelley and fucking Mike Bailey. It was just so pure crowd driven stuff on a show that had been filled with so many flashy moves and stuff. It was just so cool to see these dudes who look like just dudes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And go in there with these TV wrestler who looks like a TV wrestler, and they just get the crowd and they take them on this trip. And I was just like, that was really fucking special. And then you have 3 or 4 more matches. It was wild. But
it's totally believable too. I mean, they put, like you said, they put Steve Macklin, this guy who is absolutely intimidating out there, with somebody who looks like you or I, per se, and and they make it believable. And I mean, and Brent Oakley is absolutely fantastic,
man.
He is great. They really want us. I mean, we had seen them in smaller promotions, in the kind of Fairfield area before that, Hamilton Fairfield area, and so we're familiar. Actually, the first show that Eric and I went to, the first Revolver show we went to, those guys were working the door.
Oh wow!
And
So we
now
saw them. We're like, hey, we know
And that
you guys.
dude, that was a year and a half ago.
so that's why you felt that swell, bro, is because they've mizzed themselves. The best way I can describe it. They started out with everyone saying, "Shut up, you sucked," to now everyone being like, "Fuck, we like these guys."
Yeah.
You know, and it's so great, dude. It is. It's so it tickles my fucking spirit to know that that's one of the first moments you wanted to touch on.
Because like I mean, everybody knows like Speedball and Myra Reed. You can look at that on paper and you go, "That's gonna fuck." You can say Alex Shelley and Trent Seven. That's gonna fuck. But then you get this match with like there's some frat boys and the guy who thinks he's the Punisher. It's probably bathroom break match, and then they take you on this fucking ride, and it was just so cool.
Yeah, there is no bathroom break match ever.
Never.
It's impossible. Like even the scrambles, you're like, it's a scramble. All he needs to do scrambles. Guess
that
what?
was the best scramble I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Usually scrambles suck.
Amen.
And like, I mean, I'm talking all the way back to the old days of 2002 Ring of Honor when they came up with the scramble just to get all Mikey Whipwreck's kids on the show. It's for every move you hit, you miss 3, and everybody catches each other. It's cool, whatever. But this one actually like had people into it for more than just the moves. And I sound like an old man talking about this, but as someone who doesn't get out to a lot of wrestling shows because young kids, stay-at-home dad, not a lot of spending money, what have you, to have the experience live of something totally different than you were expecting going in such a positive way, just really kind of made my year because, I went to GCW like a couple weeks later and it was a good show. It was a lot of fun. The people were great, but there was not the, I don't want to say vibe because that doesn't really cover it because GCW has its own vibe that is really also very cool. There wasn't that buzz and electricity in the air for every match, and every match had this different feeling to it, and the crowd was in it for all of it. And as someone who didn't know upwards half the roster, because I don't get to watch everything I would like to watch, it really made it that much more enjoyable for me because when a crowd's reacting to a show, you're going to react with it, Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that, like, dude, the first show we ever went to, we went because John Moxley was on the card. We came back because of the people, like you said, I don't know these people's names, but the Crash Jacksons of the world, Brenna, like seeing those people, and I had no idea who they were, but they captivated me in one show and brought me back. And that, like, you saying all this stuff is just like, this is what I've been trying to tell everybody. Like, go to Revolver, watch Revolver. Like, it's so freaking good. Cephas has said it a million times. It's got like an ECW Ring of Honor hybrid vibe. Like, it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
They tell stories with a revolving cast of people. And you're able to continue telling stories with different people on each show. Like, we're about to go see Paul Walter Hauser versus Danhausen. Like, that's insane. We're driving 590 miles is one way. So it's over 1,000 miles both ways that we go. And we're not even like, whatever, let's do it. You know what I mean? Because it feels like we're on the precipice of an explosion for this company with all the with WWE being on Netflix next year and all this stuff that's happening. I could very well see Wrestling Revolver filling a spot that is needed for a desperate third brand. if we're going to recreate this whole new WCW versus WWF with WWE and AEW, well, who's going to be that fucking third brand that comes in and just really revolutionizes the whole era? That's what Revolver can do. And that's what I think Revolver will do if given the right opportunities. And they are getting these opportunities. They're knocking them out of the fucking park, man. They just had Paul Walter Hauser was on was it Jimmy Kimmel that he was on, or was it
it was Late Show with I think it was Colbert.
It was Colbert. That's what it was. Yeah, it was on Colbert showing clips of Revolver. You know what I mean? They had a Slammy versus an Emmy match. You know what I mean? There's
Matt Cardona versus Paul Walter Hauser.
My God.
And dude, like, so another moment that night that you were probably like, who's this guy? But the crowd's going, Crash Jackson coming back.
Yeah.
That pop, like,
so like
one of the loudest pops I've ever heard in my life.
It was a great pop, but I'm sitting there going, yeah, some motherfucker who just outside in the meet and greet was like, yeah, I'm hurt. I'm like, I'm like, this is my first show. I don't know who you are, but nice to meet you. He's like, oh yeah, I'm not wrestling tonight. I'm hurt. I'm like, it sucks. Move on. I'm like, son of a bitch. I'm not going to say that to his face.
Oh, he worked us too, dude. He worked us.
He's our friend. He straight lied to us. He went to that convention with us, and he was technically cleared then. He was like, yeah, man, I might have 6 more months of healing. We were like, oh, man.
Dude, we shared White Castles together.
Right. What up, Mike Akers? And thank you, sir. We are trying our best.
Hey, man, we want people to see
it,
man.
Is this being broadcast live now for people?
Yes, it is.
We're broadcast live on Twitter, Instagram, Twitch,
YouTube.
45 minutes into this, like, oh, we're live. I should probably pay more attention to what I'm saying. I'm just.
Oh no, we don't give a fuck.
Yeah, you're good. We're gonna make some clips out of this. That's for sure. But just say whatever, man. It's the day where we put the kids to bed at the start for a reason. You know what I mean? So.
And it really makes me happy. Like, I can't wait to go back and watch this and listen to you talk about your experience with Revolver, like, live for the first time, because everything you were saying, I'm just like, I have been wanting to say this, but I'm not as eloquent. Like, everything that was in my head, you were able to, speak it into existence. And I love that.
Well, you guys are like this. I brought a buddy with me, a soccer buddy, and he's a WWE guy, NXT guy. He'd never been to an indie show before, let alone a Revolver show.
I remember you telling me that. Yeah,
I'm
that's one to go to.
Wrestling from like my teenage years to now. I've been to a bunch. Like I said, he was like looking around, like Mike Bailey's doing the Ultimate Weapon and the Russian kicks and everything, and he's like, is it all going to be like this? I'm like, well, it's probably not all going to be this good, and then it just kept being that good.
Yeah.
And
what did you do to me?
We've got
it keeps getting better.
And he's like, well, I guess we're doing this again. I'm like, yeah, I guess we are. Yeah. So, and he came along with me because we hadn't got to hang out in a while and he didn't have anything better to do. So, it wasn't like, I'm on a mission to see Revolver for him. It was just, I'll tag along so you don't go by yourself. And it turned out so we're going back, right? And so,
the next Dayton show is, I don't know if you saw, it's a double show.
It's a double show, which I'm sitting here going,
can I get there that early?
Can I afford a babysitter for that many hours to try to bring my wife with me? That's almost an all-nighter at that point.
Dude, I'll tell you this. They did their first double show back in October. We were there for that as well, obviously. So they did the first ever Revolver Women's Grand Prix.
Yeah.
Which was amazing. Billy Starks, Marina Shafir, Emi Sakura, Trish Adora.
I was going to go to that one, but I got sick, actually. I was like this close. I'm a type 1 diabetic, so I have the immune system of something that doesn't have a good immune system. Boy, that would die. Anyway, but that was going to be my first show, and I was just, because that was the early show, then they had a later show, right?
They had Redemption after that, which was,
but then I got sick. So, when I saw they were doing a double show again, I'm like, oh, they better not both be good. I can't fucking handle it. They're both good.
Wasn't Jordan Grace? Was Jordan Grace on both?
Jordan Grace was on that show, yeah. And it's one of those things where, like, we watch the Women's Grand Prix and then we're like, oh yeah, we have a whole nother show after. Like, don't get me wrong, it makes for a long day. Like, you were exhausted by the end. But it's a good, like, holy crap, I just got to experience all that. And the next one, the first show is going to be like
Fight Club.
Fight Club, like blood sport type.
Yeah, it's gonna be. It's
like
gonna be. Yeah,
no
it's gonna be
ropes
kind
and
of
all that
similar to
shit.
Bloodsport.
Kumite.
From what I understand from my couple conversations, suffice it to say it's going to be their version of a brawl for all with less seriousness behind it. So they're just going to go in and fight each other, and I'm cool with that.
Well, as a guy who wrote a book about WMAC Masters, I feel like I probably kind of have to be there for the martial arts influenced pro wrestling show.
Yes, and Matt Riddle's going to be there. There's so many big stars on the show already. It's ridiculous.
Is Speedball announced?
Yeah,
I'm sure he's on the graphic. If Speedball's not in it, what are we doing?
What are we doing here? Yeah, like
yeah, our first show was actually John Moxley versus Speedball Mike Bailey.
Yeah, that was amazing.
how did I miss that match happening?
Right.
Yeah, a year and a half ago.
Like Speedy's like an actual through the book because he was a WMAC Masters fan. He became one later in life, so that's how I first met him, and that's kind of the bridge into the kind of deeper ends of indie wrestling for me. But I digress. But how did I not know they wrestled?
Yeah, dude.
Can we just take a minute and talk about how every year Mike Bailey somehow manages to like one up himself for the amount of ridiculous matches he has, like. And every WrestleMania weekend, he sometimes somehow manages to just outdo himself. It's
15
really
matches in 3 days.
Yeah, I was gonna say he did something ridiculous.
One of these years, it's going to be on Mania. Mark my words. I'm telling you, dude. Speedball has
he deserves it.
A career ahead of him, and when the right eyes, which they're already on him because he's in TNA, and guess who's working with TNA now? You know, I guarantee you, they're seeing Speedball and they're saying, "Oh, what kind of neat shit could we do with him and a Kofi?"
Dude.
Speedball
on NXT would be unbelievable.
Let the eyes of the world of like the NXT WWE audience get a glimpse of people like Mike Bailey and groups like the Rascals, dude. And it's just gonna blow their fucking minds.
Yeah.
No.
I just want and I don't care what company it happens in. I let it happen in PWG or someplace neutral. I don't care. Give me Malachi Aleister Black versus Speedball one time. Let me have it.
Yes.
Just give it to me one time. Let me have it. I'll shut up forever.
Dude, I am 100,000% with you on that. That would make me the happiest.
I will say this: fuck having it at PWG. Let's do that at Revolver.
Yes.
Well, I don't want to be presumptuous and start telling anyone how to book their shows, but I can guarantee
Sammy book that shit.
Hey guys, Ricochet at Revolver.
Oh, yes, the fuck.
Dude.
And from what I understand, for some reason, I don't know why he would not have one, but apparently, according to the internet, he does not have a 90-day no compete
because his contract's expiring, not because and not being released. Because
and those also aren't a thing anymore.
Oh yeah, that's right. Those aren't allowed anymore.
Those are illegal now.
Oh, that's right. We gotta get used to that.
Huh. People are showing up day after, man.
They're gonna be flippy flopping on the flippy floppies.
But forbidden
that's
just got that much more forbidden here.
Yeah. And the craziest thing to us is just how there hasn't been a bad Revolver show we've been to or watched. No. It just keeps getting better. So they keep one-upping themselves. Yeah. I don't know how, but they do. And it just makes it like I'm always so excited for the next show, whether I'm going to be there or not. I cannot wait for Revolver. Like it's my guaranteed, like I'm going to sit down and watch. I miss AEW, I miss WWE, I miss TNA all the time. But I guarantee you Revolver's on, I'm watching that shit.
Mm-hmm.
So let me put you three on the spot here. As the experts, what is the best Revolver show? If I have to go on Triller TV tomorrow after the kids are in bed and I got one show to watch, what show am I watching?
Honestly, for me, it's the last Iowa show, Ready or Not.
Okay.
Bro, for me, it would probably be the one we all attended together because I just had such a great time. But the one where Kris beats Macklin for the title, I can't remember the name of it. That was such a special moment.
That was Ring of Destiny.
Ring of Destiny. If you've not seen that one, definitely check that out because not to just toot our own horns too, because he definitely goes and hugs us directly after he wins the title. But the emotion that is in that crowd when he wins that title is such a deserved, happy for him. Like, it felt like Mick Foley on the shoulders of us. You know what I mean? Like, it literally felt like one of the moments, like, hail the conquering hero. You know, like, it was just insane.
So I didn't realize this at the time until a couple days later, and it occurred to me to go look this up. I saw Jake and Dave Kris as the Irish Airborne in a dark match at a Ring of Honor show in like 2005, 2006.
Was it in Dayton?
Yeah.
It was in Dayton, yeah.
The old fairgrounds?
Versus Teo and Generico?
The old fairgrounds?
Yeah, the old fairgrounds. I can't remember who they were against. I would have to go look it up. But I just remember going, okay, I know the name from like Twitter and seeing clips and stuff, but where do I know that name from before that? And I had to Google it. And I'm like on Cage Match going all the way back. I'm like, oh, motherfucker, the Irish Airborne. I haven't thought about that in literally 15 years. But so that was a fun old shows I went to coming together moment for me.
Those were my first experiences of indie wrestling, was those Ring of Honor shows in Dayton. CM Punk, Samoa Joe.
That match is 20 years old, by the way.
Yeah.
That match is 20 years old this year. Like actually just past 20 years old this month. 20 years.
And both those guys are still wrestling. That's insane.
Allegedly.
To be fair, Jake is on another level. I think he's just gotten better with time.
Oh yeah, Jake's killing it.
And his brother still wrestle?
No, that's a long story. You should Google
okay. I think I understand the answer there.
But Jake's a good dude. And I'll tell you this, one of the coolest things that they did, because Steve Housie talked about, they do storytelling really well. And whether, revolving door or not, all the opponents Jake Kris faced and beat, except for one, I think, he beat with a backslide. Backslide pin. So it got to the point where he'd go and hit that backslide, and we're like, this is it. They made it to where it wasn't just, here's a backslide. Like, it was a finishing maneuver, and it was awesome. Granted, the only time he didn't do it was at the Iowa show we were at. He had a barbed wire match against Alex Colon, and he put him in a sharpshooter, and they were both wrapped in barbed wire, and it was one of the coolest finishes to a match I've ever seen in my life.
So the first time someone kicked out of the backslide, I assume everyone lost their damn minds too, right? Yeah.
Yep.
I love that. Like,
which
as a writer,
Cat Shit Eater, Alex Shelley.
As a writer, that's the kind of stuff that like hooks me. Like, obviously, I love Mike Bailey's one of my favorite wrestlers. I love the crazy flashy moves. Don't get me wrong, but the little recurring through lines of things, and those like to go back to the touchstone we were just talking about, the early Ring of Honor days. Samoa Joe had a weakness to flash pins. He never lost unless he was getting rolled up, and so. In those Joe Punk matches, every time Punk went for a roll up, he went, "Oh fuck, he's got him," and then he didn't.
Yeah.
Those types of things are really what make me. Those are really what separate the good indie wrestlers. And I'm not using it derogatorily. I just mean the guys who aren't on TV getting agented, to hell. The good indie wrestlers maybe have a little bit of that, but they have mostly the flashy moves and stuff. The great indie wrestlers, the people who are the ones who are going to make that jump, or the people who are going to carry a company to that next level, they're the ones, like you were just talking about, who are making those decisions on their own and who are putting those into their matches with that forethought. And that's what stands out to people. That's what stands out to people like my buddy Joey. And that's what brings people back, because they're like, that was more than just what I was expecting. It's that extra 5%, so to speak.
They make you care, man.
I can't remember exactly which documentary it is, but there's a documentary somewhere that exists where Triple H is talking about training wrestlers, and he's watching these guys have a match, and one of the guys clubs the other guy over the chest, and he really gets his chest red, right? And then the guy whose chest is red reverses momentum and gets the other guy in a hold, and as he's holding the guy, he's hurting. He's feeling his chest like, oh, my chest hurts. And he's like, that right there is what's going to make a great wrestler. That little extra. He didn't have to sell his chest too there. But the fact that he did and he drew attention to it and he winced, he's struggling, and that's something that's really rampant in Revolver, man. They can tell stories with their faces. It's so fun to watch. It really is.
Yeah, I remember talking to you guys and both you guys saying, that was your first live Revolver show, and him saying it was his first indie show. And I was like, oh my God, come back and talk to me when the show's over. And there was a couple other people throughout the night that had said the same thing before the show started. And I love those reactions though, because if it's your first Revolver show, your socks are going to be blown off. And if it's your first, indie show ever, then, you're going to be
a good one to come to.
You set the bar a little high for yourself, though.
Yeah.
Like not every show is going to have that level of stuff right out the gate and continuing on all night. Like it's just not possible, unless it is.
I was about to say, unless you go to Revolver.
Yeah. Sami Callihan has his pulse or his hand on the pulse of indie wrestling.
For sure.
Well, he should. He's been everywhere for forever.
People love him.
He's a CW guy, IWA Mid-South, PWG. He did everything.
Yeah, and the thing that I love the most about Sami is obviously we've been to quite a few Revolver shows. His ability to improvise on the fly, because it's indie shows, flights get canceled, whatever, people, don't show up last minute. It's never felt like, oh, well, here's a filler match. Like, I remember one time, I can't remember who it was. I think it was like Takeshita or something. Yeah. Couldn't make it. So it was supposed to be Gringo Loco versus Konosuke Takeshita. So it was like Takeshita couldn't make it. So it ended up being Rich Swann versus Gringo Loco. And they tore the fucking house down.
Right, yeah.
And it made you give a shit. It wasn't just, hey, look at all these cool moves. Like, they ended up integrating a story into it. And it was part of a storyline for Swan. And it was just like, it was seamless. And I love it.
That's one of my favorite openers, too.
Yeah.
I would have sent that match out first, too. That's ballsy.
He knows how to start a fucking show, dude. Every time you watch, every time, every first match of a show is an absolute ring dinger.
Yep.
Right. It's getting to the point now where, like, we'll see the cards and we'll be like, how in the fuck does he order this right? How does he make this to where we're not going to be like, oh, that should have been last or this should have been last?
The championship match went on second at the show we were at, what I mean?
Second.
I mean, it's almost one of those things where, like, 5 of the 8 matches on the card could be, if not all 8, could be main event matches. Like they could do a scramble as a main event, and I'd buy it. Like,
it's Revolver. I'll buy it.
Masha in it. I'll buy it.
Yeah.
God, I love Masha Slamovich.
Yeah, they did Masha versus Jake something. Ugh.
Noticing where we're at the time, we're pretty much at wrap-up time. But I want to bring up an obscure '90s thing that I really love, and I want to get your opinion on it and see if it's something that you like.
All right.
Because I feel like I'm the only person who's a giant mega fan of Animorphs, and I don't know if Animorphs is something that any of you guys got into, but I have
loved Animorphs, dude.
Listen, they just have started coming out with them on audio and on Audible, and I have went back through and they've gotten most of them out. I think there's about 15 or more left that still need to come out. But it has been such a wild ride to go back to where my mind was in 4th grade reading these fucking books.
Yeah.
They are very much so written for teenagers.
Yeah.
There are times where you're just like, God damn it, shut the fuck up and just do what you have to do. But other than that, it's been a fucking amazing trip down that lane. Are you into obscure '90s shit, or is it just it was WMAC something that you just always liked as a kid?
I mean, I wrote a book on WMAC Masters. It's kind of obligation to be an obscure '90s shit. I'm all about it. Animorphs, I remember reading. Looking back on it now, some of the shit they got away with, man, that was horrific for kids to be reading some of that stuff.
Yeah.
But it's so great. But just obscure '90s stuff in general. Always down for it. There was a rabbit hole I fell down actually while researching the WMAC Masters book. There was a series of pay-per-views in the 90s that had a similar concept to WMAC Masters, except aimed at adults, called Fight Zone.
Okay.
Fight Zone.
It is wild. Very 90s, kind of racist, kind of over the top. The characters were like... Apparently, somebody who was a fan of that and WMAC Masters sent it to me like, hey, there's some crossover between the casts. You should check it out. And like some of these pay-per-views don't even exist anymore. Like they weren't documented. Some of them aired only in Russia. But it was like when I think of obscure...
Sugar Ray Leonard was behind it.
Yeah, apparently. Like it... I briefly thought about following that rabbit hole further, and I'm like, nope, I'm already running out of space in this book. I've already had to cut things. We're not gonna, I'd have to price the book at like $50 if I kept adding things. But yeah, so any like Ronin Warriors, all the kind of obscure '90s kids shows that people don't remember, '90s kids books.
It was a great era. The 90s were wonderful. I was born in the 80s, but I grew up in the 90s, baby.
Yeah, man. That's it was the best.
I named my son Link, so nostalgia is something that goes heavy with me. You know what I mean? So Link's Awakening was the first game I ever beat on my own, and I remember just being so proud of myself. And then I ended up growing up naming my boy Link. So
that's awesome, dude.
Hell yeah. Well, yeah, we're at 1:06 here, fellers. You guys got anything else before we head out of here?
Actually,
Kris, well, first of all, Kris, do you have anything you'd like to plug? Obviously, the book or anything?
You can find me on Twitter or X if you're one of the weirdos who calls it X at WMAC Masters book. The book is available on Amazon in both physical and digital. Also available on BarnesandNoble.com, all places like that. We're also on Facebook at Quest for the Dragon Star. And yeah, guys, just thank you so much for having me. This was really, really awesome.
Absolutely, this was
and
a lot
you've
of
been
fun,
a great guest for real.
Yeah, we had conversations like you said, a Revolver, man. And we started sharing your stories. Like, I think our audience would love to hear this. Actually,
yeah.
I'm glad I didn't take the ratings, because it could have gone one of two ways. Either people would like it, or all of a sudden the live stream's just barren and a little.
At the end of the day, this is for us, and I think I can speak for all three of us dads when I say this has been a great conversation. So
absolutely,
it's a success. And I think I can also speak for the rest of the dads when I say that we'd like to have an autographed copy of your book. So if we could arrange that to happen,
we can make that happen for sure.
Absolutely,
wonderful.
That'd be awesome. Well, as always, we've been the DWO Podcast. I'm Big Rig Eric Maffey. He is Mr. Magnificent Mike Martin. He is the wrestling teacher Guy Sivas, and he is the author of Quest for the Dragon Star, Mr. Kris Landis. Sir, thank you so much for coming on. As always, you can check us out on all the socials at DWO_podcast, Facebook at the DWO Podcast, TikTok at DWO_pod. Get that dad merch at Pro Wrestling Tees, TeePublic, or message us directly. We can ship it to you. Like, subscribe, listen, follow, get that merch, all the good stuff. We will be back on Thursday with our boy King Bomani. Cannot wait for that. And until next time, Top Dads out.